people.
All right. Vankowski.
Well, a lot's been said already. Pretty much everything I agree with. I just wanted to say that I really liked my players, and I thought they played very well. Hill and Anderson, given what they saw and what they had access to, I don't think I would have played it any differently. I think Hill did a great job getting his people where they needed to be. Very little instruction. Got himself into the fight online, right where he needed to be to kind of um, stemmy that blow that was coming on the rebel flank. And Anderson, great intuition, um, guessing what was going on. Unfortunately, he didn't get to get moving until it was a little too late, but that wasn't really his choice. And eventually he said, I'm going, which is great because probably the only thing saving the rebel army, allowing them to retreat in some form of order. So that's all I really have to say.
All right. I'm going to open up to the players now. Anderson.
Yeah, I mean, I think that given the information that we had, I actually, first of all, I really like the plan that was actually set out in the first place. I think it was an excellent plan given the situation that we were given. And I especially like the little maneuver in the south. But after we found out that there wasn't all that many Union soldiers in the South. I mean, I was told that we were outnumbered 2-1, so it became natural to assume that the North was getting absolutely hammered. So I went up and talked to Lee, who promptly told me to bring my brigade up, which I suggested to Longstreet the turn before as well. Longstreet kind of wanted to attack across the river, and I can kind of see why he would, given how weak the Union troops were there. But again, the situation in the north was collapsing, so I think I ultimately made a decent call there, to say so. But I think everybody did. I really like Lee's plan. Actually, that's all I have to say.
All right.
May I
Longstreet.
may I request umpire's lock be able to speak before Longstreet, sir? Sorry.
Oh my gosh, you're
Oh, I
so
thought he did. I
right.
thought he did speak.
He
Slug.
did not.
That was
Oh,
not
I'm
me.
very sorry, Slug. I'm
I
sorry.
was on mute the entire time. I try and be very respectful.
All right, I'm sorry, Slug. I thought you had spoken. My bad. I didn't mean to skip over you.
Oh, no
Thank
worries,
you,
no
Reno.
worries.
Thank you, Reno, for pointing that out. All right,
Yes.
Slug, go ahead.
So I did have Reno and I had Mansfield down here in the south. That was very interesting because of the Confederate deployment and the fog that we were taking account of in the morning. That they threw their men across those bridges, and both of them pretty much lost half their strength right at the beginning. I would have to agree that maybe the turns are a little bit um, harsh on some of the players because I feel like maybe at least one of these brigades that was in the rear would at least be able to pull back and maybe like rally at one of the farms to come back into the fight in some degree. But regardless of that, we did have a very interesting development with Reno when his first, I believe it was First Division, shattered across the river. Um, he had men trying to fjord the river, and he actually asked to send a requisition of truce for an hour to allow his men to be pulled from the river. And I don't know if we ever sent that order out because there was no playable character in this area, but that was very interesting to see in a live game a player ask for a moment of truce. But I feel like both these players, they did very well. Mansfield down here did his best with what he could, feigned a retreat, and actually was able to inflict some casualties on Longstreet's men. And I think overall they did what they were supposed to do. They pinned down a lot of Confederate forces over here that were unable to assist over here. And yes, they took casualties, but it's kind of sad that during the course of the battle, they until we just ended it now, they probably didn't get to see the effects of their actions that by pinning all these troops down and Anderson, like we've said multiple times, if Anderson may have gotten his troops over here in one more turn early, he probably could have altered the course of the battle by saving the baggage train, maybe even holding up the Union assault on the flank, and so forth. So I think these players did the best with what they could. I mean, it's very tough in this period to try and cross over a single crossing point of a river that's uncrossable under fire. So I think overall it was very interesting scenario and showed what would have possibly happened if McClellan had been a little bit more aggressive at Antietam that day and deployed some of the reserves.
Thank you. And yeah, sorry again for skipping you. That was an accident.
Oh, no worries.
All right, Longstreet, do you want to go?
Yeah, so I just want to say, first of all, that I had no idea Lee ordered Anderson to go northwards before Anderson mentioned it to me. I had no clue on that, and as far as I remember, I didn't stop Anderson from going. It's just that me and Anderson were bickering for about 2 good turns if I want to launch a charge across the lower bridge or not to overturn the Union southern flank, and was against it. I was for it. He told me the pros and cons. I told him the pros and cons. But ultimately, we stalemate, and I should probably form up a grand battery, blast my way across the lower bridge, soften them up, and then launch an advance. That's about it. I did my job. I defended the lower bridge.
All right. James.
Besides the fact, I did deploy Hood's division to the north as Lee asked, so I was working with Lee, but I didn't know Anderson was ordered to go north. So Anderson, I may have not heard that, or you may have failed to mention it to me. Either way, we did our job in the south, so all good.
All right, James, you were gone earlier when I was asking the CICs how they would think they're doing. Hopefully you're back now. Would you like to say something?
Yeah, I'm back. You caught me. I didn't think it would end so quickly. First of all, thank you for the game. It was always enjoyable to get to play and not have to umpire, so thank you for that.
How do you think you're doing? We skipped that part.
I think. I mean, the now that I see it, it looks about how I imagined it. So obviously the Union's in a pretty good position. The plan was made by Jehost Sumner, and so props to him for the good plan. I really liked the flanking movement that Hooker made on the far west, and of course it panned out and worked well for us. So Hooker's our MVP today. I think we're in a strong position to. Our goal was to trap the Confederate Army and prevent their escape, and I think there's a good chance that we might succeed in that. So definitely excited about that. As Kermit mentioned, it's really hard for the Confederates to win in this scenario because the Union basically has to be as dumb as they were historically for that to happen, and it's a lot easier to do better than that, especially when there's no delays in communication and it's easier to coordinate and all that. So all the Union players played really well, followed the orders as best they could. I know it was a tough fight for those on the bridges, but they did their job, and so I'm proud with how they did, and overall it was very fun and enjoyable.
All right. Hooker.
I had the far right flank. I marched and didn't see anybody, and marched faster and still didn't see anybody, and marched some more and still didn't see anybody, and I was starting to get dreams about making it all the way into Sharpsburg when I finally saw some folks in the cornfield, and then pitched in, and here we are. I think it went pretty well.
All right. Mansfield.
Yeah. At the beginning, I really, my mission was to try and pin down forces against me and get them to commit. And I thought, there's no way they expect me to cross in the first turn. They definitely won't see that coming. And then I crossed the division, and that division instantly melted as soon as the fog lifted. But after that, it was a pretty fun defense. I tried as many tricks as I could in my position, and I think it worked out well. I think it played to our advantage. I'm glad to see that we won. Otherwise, I would have been very sad.
All right, Porter.
Yeah. Had a good time. Marched down and spent most of my time the farm where I ended. That masked battery was really difficult to deal with. It kind of kept me pinned for it kept me pinned several turns. And really anything I tried to do to put pressure on the Confederates at the sunken road was kind of stymied by that battery. But McClellan ordered me to keep spending lives, so I did. But yeah, I think Hooker's flank attack really saved my command. But yeah, if the center hadn't broken, I was going to take a turn or two to reorganize and just pretend that I was threatening the Confederate center while the battle went on elsewhere. But yeah, good game.
Right,
Thanks to the umpires, of course, for their wonderful game. I'm the other trap of the Union in the middle bridge there. Unfortunately, took a lot of loss of division, or most of a division, I should say. Not solid job on the Confederates. It was a good plan. I even sent skirmishers out, but I think the fog really made it difficult for me to judge the numbers, and I committed. Unfortunately, should have also sent some skirmishers into that wheat field. That was a bad move, but we did what we needed to do. We occupied the division there, and even though we got battered pretty hard, I think we did our job. I think Sumner's attack on the flank really was really helpful there. Sumner, thank you so much for that. And when you were able to push on their left, I was able to push in the center, and we saved a little bit of what what our dignity we had left. So thank you for that. But good job, good plan, Confederates. Good job.
Summer.
Thanks. Excellent job by the umpires. Turns went insanely fast, in my opinion. And yeah, it was a very interesting time. My lead division, as of the end of the game, was still reforming. My other division, or my first division, was still marching, and I think the only division for me that fought was actually Sedgwick's, that ended up helping out the 9th get across the middle bridge. But no, like Hooker's flank, I think won us the game, really, because in the end it would have forced a radical redeployment regardless. But still, well done by the Confederates. We didn't expect that massive battery in the center, and we definitely didn't expect the well-laid traps at the 2 bridges, obviously. So well done to the enemy.
Franklin.
Yeah, going in, it was pretty swell. I don't think I met the enemy until like the 4th turn. That was like 8. But eventually we did, and I don't think I lost a full division during all this fighting. Just bits and pieces of one, or all of them. I think I had my entire 4 engaged at some point. I don't know which Confederate Corps had that brigade in the rear. That was slightly annoying to realize my entire supply train was getting raided. I don't think I've got anything else to add besides that.
Right, Lee.
Yeah. So kind of just give a brief outline of my plan. Basically, I had a large concentration at the lower bridge with the intention of, crushing whatever crossed there and then pivoting those forces north because obviously, we're outnumbered. You gotta, keep those forces. You gotta use them and then move them. Basically, was kind of my thinking. So basically, the plan was crush whatever crossed the lower bridge, pivot them up. If there's heavy stuff at the middle bridge, they'll go there. If there's not heavy stuff there, they'll go support Jackson's line. So that was the rough plan. Didn't really Anderson, and after they crushed that force that moved down south, they didn't move, all that quickly, which, I don't blame them. I think they didn't really know what they were facing. They didn't know how much more. I do want to say that an attack across the bridge was explicitly ordered that shouldn't happen in person when I was with Longstreet. So I kind of got a little concerned because I got a dispatch at 8 o'clock saying like I'm attacking across the bridge, and I was like, what? You shouldn't do that. Anyways, and then one other thing that kind of threw a wrench in our plans. I was under the impression, and from reading the briefing, I thought that I had every division, like, that I could deploy freely on the field. And so I did my deployments. I had them done. I was told I had to have them done by Sunday. So I had them done by Sunday night. They were in. And I didn't find out until 50 minutes before the battle that one of the divisions that I thought would be with Jackson, giving him interior lines that he could, because I understood that flank of his was in the air. But I figured, I have 2 divisions though that can move over there and kind of cover that flank of his. I underestimated how bad the fog would be. But anyways, so I don't know what happened there with that not being noticed earlier. That probably would have changed my plans a fair bit, but I didn't find that out until like just before the battle was coming on, and I didn't have time to redraw the whole battle plan, so that kind of threw a wrench into things.
I would like to say it was with the map information that Hill will start the battle at the southern or western edges of reinforcements.
So yeah, so where was that? Because I was trying to find it before the battle.
It's right above the briefing with the map.
Briefing, yeah, it says Lee's. Okay, above, not included in the briefing. Okay, yeah, I see.
All right, Jackson.
I really wish that I'd sent some of my reserve off to the left. I just kind of went QAnon there and trusted the plan. That was unfortunate. But thank you guys for winning the game, and well, I'm all dead, so
All right, thank you guys for playing. It was a lot of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed the game. You're free to hang out as long as you want, or leave if you want to go to bed. I will add that I don't think there's much the Confederates could have done better, just because it was really painful when they were asking me why their scouts didn't see anybody coming on the west, and just saying, well, if they don't see them, they can't report about them.
I mean, go check the Google Street View from the edge of those woods on the Sharpsburg Pike. You can't see shit past those roads, especially the way they would do the woodlots on those farms. On the borders of their property, you wouldn't see it.
Yeah, I mean, like, even on a perfect sunny day, even if the hills weren't there, it's more than a mile away anyways. But yeah, it was a lot of fun running this. I will say that combat was definitely very deadly for the first couple turns, because of just the overwhelming amount of cannon fire and the angles they were firing at. There was a lot of flanking artillery fire too. And then when they retreat across the river, we had talked about how if the rivers are already kind of flooding and you're trying to ford across it in a panic, or you're kind of funneled through the bridge, still being shot in your rear. But I hope you guys had fun, and
Thank you to all the umpires. Much appreciated.
Yeah, it was a great game.
Thank you.
Very fun game.
Thank you.
Man, done within 2 hours and 30 minutes. That's
yeah, I thought we were
What's
taking too
great?
long for a lot of the turns. I started.
Me too. I was like, I'm
Yeah.
gonna get bored. You gotta get back to him.
Yeah, because we started talking about, I think specifically when Hooker's flank occurred, we were talking about that for it felt like hours
Mhm.
talking, but then it's like, oh, it's only 11. Wow.
Yeah, it was quite quick, I'd say.
They're gone already, but the Anderson and the Hills player I thought were really good.
Yeah. Man, it was so painful. Because what happened was Anderson was just like, this is a really small force. Like he didn't have orders to do it. He would just ask Longstreet, hey, can I start moving my division up to the north because I think they need it. We're good down here. We don't need anything. So I think I can take mine and then Hood's and we can just go over. And then it's just like, nope. Gets sent to Robert E. Lee, who then tells him, we need them yesterday. And then so it's like instead of it's a full
Poor guy knew exactly what he needed to do. Poor bastard.
Yeah.
I'll also say it's kind of funny. The one of the umpires was complaining that James was sending too much mail out, and the Confederates kind of had the opposite problem where Lee didn't talk to anybody at all, and so he had no idea that Hill was even on the field.
It was so funny.
Like, Hill was like in position, waiting, just kind of sitting behind Jackson's line, and neither of them had any idea who was even on the field still.
Well, the crazy thing is, despite that, the Hill player wasn't inactive. He was actually working on a lot of stuff, just getting his dudes ready, getting his line together. So, I mean, I thought he did a really good job with the information that he had.
To be clear, was that the reserve division that marched up on me the next to last turn, or was that who I ran into in the
I'm assuming that was Hill.
That was Hill, yes.
Hill was the second Confederate force that you ran into. So actually, DH Hill actually was both the Hills. DH Hill was the first
True. Yes.
Confederate that you ran into, and then it was AP Hill, and then Hood and Anderson came in at the very end.
So true. So true.
And actually, we were talking about it was kind of funny that Anderson may have had a chance to get like his huge force here up into the flank of the Confederates if Lee hadn't personally charged in with 4 brigades to drive off 1 brigade that was finishing up with the baggage trains, and warning the Union about an attack coming from the south.
I liked the Anderson player. I was like, man, if I was him, I'd tell my corps commander to go fuck himself, and then he did it.
Yeah, no. I do think it does deserve mentioning. Not that I'm ragging on MDWTK, because at the same time I understand wanting to turn the southern flank. I get it completely, but it was really funny because they spent because I think y'all were sitting in call for like 10 minutes in the umpire chat for like 10 minutes afterwards while I was listening to the both of them argue. As Anderson was like, I have orders directly from Lee saying that I need to take everything and move it north. And then they continued to argue in spite of their commander-in-chief's direct orders for the next 5-10 minutes.
Yikes.
Sounds like typical Civil War generals.
Yeah.
Didn't
I threw down my sword down in his face and I said, "Give me 1 brigade."
I want to say that exact situation happened with Jackson and one of his subordinates during the Civil War.
Well, we talked about
this.
this.
Was it Hill? Yeah.
We were talking about this in the umpire chat. I was just kind of ragging on Jackson because during the 7 days battle,
the historical figure, not the player. Not the player. It was like
the figure. He would show up in the 7 days battle 3 hours late and out of position with exhausted men, and then he wouldn't coordinate his attack with the person he was supposed to be coordinating with. And then Lee would come up to him at the end of the day and be like, "Dude, what the hell?" And he'd be like, "It's the other guy. Arrest him."
But I think more than anything, and they've already left, so again, I'm not going to rag on the Confederates, but I think the only thing they could have done differently is not deploy as many at the bridges.
I agree. Yes.
Especially facing 12th Corps, which is the entire reason in my plan I put them down there. That's 5 brigades occupying basically an entire corps.
I pointed it out the second turn. I was like, dude, they're way overcommitted on that southern bridge.
I actually really liked that plan. I think that if they had left the turn after you retreated back across the river, shattered, if they had just taken some of the forces and gone north after that, it would have been an amazing plan. But they just sat.
I mean, considering the information they had, I imagine Longstreet wanted to press the advantage, or at least, and I think that's a natural thing to do for any commander who is just absolutely beat the hell out of their opponent in their sector. I'd imagine they would probably want to press, and that's I think what their whole deliberation was, right?
Well, that is Chinese specialty,
and it immobilized him.
Here's where I'm going to say on that though. Sorry to cut you off.
No, go ahead.
If Longstreet had pushed across, let's say, the southern bridge and routed Mansfield, where's he going to go? He's going to head north. He's going to bump into Reno, probably push him back, but then where's he going to go from that? He can't cross the creek to outflank Sumner.
He would have run into me anyway. With me coming down, but even more than that, Slock, the one thing I'll point out, and I see a lot of people do this, is don't repay an enemy's mistake by just making the same mistake.
Right.
Longstreet had a lot of guys down there, but I think Mansfield, you still had enough that he was not going to cross that bridge without losing, a quarter of his command.
I made a mistake in deploying really close to the river line. I didn't actually realize how close my batteries were to the river line and the ranges of the man. He probably, if he was a little more vigorous, he definitely could have just shattered my men across the river. but it also would have done nothing, and I would have kept the men occupied for a long time. It was definitely it is a very interesting decision to keep all of those men there for so long. I think I was outnumbered like 2.5 times, which was like a
Easily.
You're
crazy.
over. I'm looking at the screenshot you put in planning, and that's over 2.5 times.
Yeah, there were so many people down there, and then they just stayed there. I was like, what?
Well, especially after your lead division was completely routed, you had
Yeah.
what, 3 brigades?
Yeah, I thought nothing, and that battery was pretty much almost entirely shattered. Like my first deployed battery, it got up to 5, and I was very lucky that it didn't shatter. I was extremely lucky. It was a really bad development, but
what did you guys think of the fog? By the way, James had mentioned that Antietam is kind of done to death, and I should try to find some way to like make it unique. And so I thought that like it would be, a more fair for the Confederates, an easier battle for them to plan around, and also if the river was flooded, so like you had to use the bridges, you couldn't go south and forward, right? And that way they have these nice choke points to narrow the front down, and then also with the fog, what I kind of wanted you guys stumbling into each other, which ended up happening, which I liked. What did you guys think of the fog and the flooding?
It made my life much easier, frankly.
My poor bitch drowned in the river.
Because I knew that with the fog, unless they had someone right on top of me, they weren't going to see me coming down that far road between the hills and the woodlots. Frankly, if I had seen so much as like a division, either in that Bowtie woodlot or Stewart's Hill, anywhere, I probably would have shaken out, deployed, and waited to go in with the rest of the army. So, like, if realistically that even overcommitted to the south as they were, if they had put basically anything in my way, I think it would have saved them practically.
I gotta say, Squire, you did a fantastic job of once you encountered the enemy, you resisted the urge to just go into Sharpsburg and instead realized that you needed to destroy the enemy to your front instead of just going around them. Because at that point, AP Hill could have isolated you.
Yeah. Although my thought was like, if they do isolate me, presumably they're pulling the forces from somewhere else. And they just don't have enough to spend swallowing an entire core-sized formation without fatally weakening themselves somewhere else. But, I figured they probably saw me from that cornfield, so what the hey?
What the hey?
I mean, you did your job very well, Again, almost like, okay, all but 6 baggage trains for the Confederates were destroyed by a single brigade, right? That is one hell of a trade-off of forces, right? Like, even if it had been destroyed. So yeah, I think McClellan has safely avoided being fired by Lincoln, unlike historically.
Well, the issue there is, does he follow up on the victory and actually pursue past Sharpsburg?
James,
No.
James, you want to set up camp?
I mean, you just lost 2 divisions on the eastern side. Your center is pretty shot up, and yeah, so as McClellan, I don't know if you would continue pushing past Sharpsburg after capturing maybe a corps.
Yeah, that's fair, actually. And I mean, even if he doesn't, again, just how horrible of a loss it is for the Confederates to lose almost all their cannons in that, Grand Battery there.
Oh
would
my
be felt
lord.
for all campaigns in the future,
Yeah.
Like, I even made a joke when we're
See you
finishing up the
guys.
game that it was like 5 years of the Confederate GDP just down the toilet right there.
Yeah.
Gonna be obsolete 6-pounders from here on out.
If I may, who had the singular brigade in my rear?
Oh, that was one of Jackson's. It was already there, like, in their deployment.
Goodness.
I let them deploy a lot further forward than you guys, just because, I mean, Lee was already there waiting, like, the day before. And so, like, he would have had more time to get set up, anyways. And yeah. Also, he never gave explicit orders to it after deployment. So, like, eventually, one of the other empires was just like, man, I feel like at this point, they would, they want to just sit here watching.
They were completely cut off. There was a massive battle going on. I'm like, nobody in their right mind would just sit here.
Especially after routing that many troops back across the bridge, like redeploy, move somewhere else where your troops are actually going to be useful. I mean, you can hold the bridge. That's your only job.
Yeah, I mean, that was actually very fun to umpire. I was kind of nervous for the first time that it was going to end with a lot of people yelling, but no, it was pretty fun.
And I will say it was interesting watching Mansfield like trying to play Tetris with his units. Like, okay, this one is still in good order. I'm gonna try and move them up. This one's bad. I'm gonna try and save them, and then like swapping them every turn. And Reno got very lucky that they didn't press him. I mean, he was in that skirmish on the north end, but I feel like if he had been pressed, he would have been in the same exact situation as Mansfield of playing that Tetris game and moving his units around.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Tetris game was played very well. I must say.
There are also some
thank you. There's really I was trying really hard not to just completely shatter. I was every turn I would see they would move up and shoot my guys and they just get demolished. I was like, oh my god, how am I gonna hold this? But they didn't press. So
there were some pretty fun situations too, where we're trading units would block their own artillery, especially in the traps to the east, because it was just such a narrow front there.
Yeah.
I'm just frustrated I never got to actually use the Irish Brigade.
Aww.
Oh, but yeah,
Send
James.
them to go and capture some Confederate artillery.
James, what would you have changed about this scenario? What were some of the ways you were thinking of changing it even? I didn't want to ask you for direct input before, because I mean, you're playing in it. I don't want you to have any idea on what I might put in. But now after the fact, I definitely would like to hear what your ideas would have been.
I don't know. I probably would have changed it quite significantly, to where it wasn't even the Battle of Antietam anymore. Maybe giving the Confederates the numerical advantage, or.
I can think of a way that I've heard in the past is that in alt history, the Union Army marches to relieve Harper's Ferry, and then moves north. So instead of a north-south, you have south-north, with the Confederates basically yeah.
That'd be interesting.
Reversed, you mean?
So yeah, so the Union would be able to deploy, southwest, and then on the southeast side of the Antietam Creek, and then the Confederates are inverse.
I had thought about actually giving the Confederates more forces, and I kind of wanted to make you guys wonder about if they did or not, because I put in the briefing rumors of a massive Confederate army, 100,000 strong, reinforcing.
Yeah.
So I was hoping that you guys would at least consider that they might be massively outnumbering you.
Oh, if Lee's call for Marylanders actually worked.
And so yeah, in the briefing it's oh yeah, massive Confederate army is reinforcing Lee, but you guys called the bluff, I guess, because you went straight in balls to the walls anyways.
A couple things I've played with in trying to think about Civil War scenarios, because they're so well known, ones that aren't alt history, is trying to inject some of the real life problems that commanders faced. So those would be things like map issues. So not always orienting screenshots north-south, taking a really hard, line about being able to see cross, for example, cornfields, and really restricting view that way. Not giving, names of prominent landmarks, etc. And the other thing would be false reports or ghost units. Mistaking a couple skirmishers or pickets in the woods for an entire regiment, or things like that. So a unit marker pops up on the battlefield, and just because that's what you got to report, and you have to decide whether or not that's real, whether or not things like that.
I like that idea. Yeah, I might include that in some future games. But yeah, I hope you guys still had fun, even though it wasn't that different from historical, just with a few more restrictions. Yeah, I actually really quite like the fog, though. I thought it was really fun that the fog, lifted right as you guys are meeting each other.
Yeah.
So you have these engagements where troops still in column would suddenly be in less than half the range of artillery firing canister through them. So yeah, it gave the Confederates a huge advantage early on.
God, I can only imagine the newspaper articles that would have come out about that.
Oh yeah, I mean, the Union lost 3 divisions entirely just to cannon fire because like they would march
Jeez.
right into range, directly, like being flanked on both sides by cannon, like a grape shot, or they were like in columns, so it was just firing down the rows with multiple batteries.
So A, the casualties from that would have been hideous, but B, like if that had actually happened historically, that might have actually had real knock-on effects in terms of European military doctrine and how they thought about artillery moving forward.